They were thrilled, bragging about an invitation to a $10 million villa in Catalina Bay. I just smiled. The funny part is, my housekeeper sent that invitation, this Thanksgiving, when my father toasts his top-tier connections. The first person they'll see isn't their imaginary host. It will be the useless daughter they just uninvited. My name is Melody Rogers. I am 29 years old, living in Chicago. The cold, logical grid of the city suits me. I was a lawyer, the kind who read fine print until my eyes burned, but I left the billable hours behind. Now, I am senior counsel for the Prairie State Professional Standards Council. It's an organization with a deliberately boring name, which is perfect. We don't handle dramatic courtroom showdowns. We handle the quiet, internal rot of ethical breaches, conflicts of interest, and professional misconduct. My work is not about passion. It's about ledgers, timelines, and the precise, procedural application of standards. It's a job for a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. This precision has become my default state. Perhaps because my own body is so imprecise. I have degenerative disc disease, a simple diagnosis that feels like a life sentence. My spine is a daily negotiation with pain. The X-rays show bone spurs and compressed nerves. The aftermath of a fusion surgery at L4, L5 that stabilized the structure, but did not erase the memory of the trauma. To my family, this condition is not a medical fact. It is a personality flaw. You're dramatizing, Melody. You just need to think positive. You're always so negative. It brings everyone down. My recovery was not seen as a physical trial, but as a failure of my enthusiasm, an inconvenient, self-indulgent performance. My phone vibrated on the reclaimed wood of my desk. The screen lit up, the Rogers clan family group chat. My mother's text landed first. Good news, everyone. We've been invited to an exclusive Thanksgiving dinner at Catalina Bay. A new acquaintance of your father's is hosting at his gorgeous villa. We are so excited. A pause. Then, a second message from her, still in the group chat. A public execution disguised as an apology. Melody, honey, I'm so sorry, but seating is extremely limited. It's a very high-profile event. We just can't bring our complications. This host wants a positive, light atmosphere. You understand. We'll see you for Christmas. Maybe. It's just better this way. You wouldn't enjoy the drive anyway. Not with your back. Complications. Negative atmosphere. That's me. The screen went dim. They didn't even bother with the courtesy of a private message. They had uninvited me in front of everyone, immediately. The chat flooded with replies. My sister, Evelyn. OMG, Mom, Catalina Bay. That's amazing. I'll clear my schedule. My father. That's my girl, Evie. Always ready for an opportunity. Evelyn is the star. The 27-year-old marketing guru whose entire life is a curated Instagram feed of beige filters, borrowed luxury, and motivational quotes about the hustle. She is light. She is easy. She is everything I am not. In their eyes, Evelyn is a social multiplier, an asset who reflects their ambitions. I am the liability, the emotional burden, the subtraction, the one who talks about spinal pressure instead of influencer parties. I closed the chat. The familiar sting of anger didn't come. Instead, a cold, quiet efficiency took its place. I turned to my personal laptop, the one firewalled 6 ways from Sunday, and opened a secure portal. The interface was minimalist, all gray and white text, no branding. I clicked the Assets tab. A name appeared: La Palmera, an image loaded, a high-definition, real-time security feed of a pristine, cobalt blue bay, Catalina. I navigated to Holdings, a line item, La Palmera Villa, Catalina Bay. Value assessed at $10,200,000. Ownership held by Ravenhill Trust, LLC. I clicked the final tab. Beneficiary, a single line of text. Beneficiary Melody Rogers, my villa, the one they were driving to, desperate to impress a new acquaintance. I didn't buy La Palmera with family money. I earned it. The memory is sharp, cutting, 3 years ago, I was still practicing, but already moving into independent advisory work, specializing in distressed debt and complex asset forfeiture. A hedge fund, Vale Capital, run by a man named Grant Vale, was drowning in bad paper after over-leveraging itself on coastal properties. I was brought in as an independent consultant, a neutral party, to assess the portfolio's toxicity, to find a clean exit before the SEC tore them apart. Grant Vale was arrogant, dismissive. Like my father, he mistook my quiet, procedural nature for weakness. He thought I was just a paper pusher, but I read the covenants. All 800 pages, buried in a subclause of a mezzanine loan, was a poison pill. The fund's failure triggered a series of cascading defaults, and I had found the one clean breach. My fee wasn't cash, it was leverage. I negotiated my compensation as a first option asset call on one of the distressed properties. Should the fund fully dissolve, I chose La Palmera. It was the least leveraged and the most beautiful. When Vale Capital imploded 6 months later, the creditors fought over scraps, but my option, filed correctly, notarized, and time-stamped, was ironclad. I executed it. The $10 million villa became mine for the price of my consultancy fee and a token $100. Grant Vale lost everything, including the villa he used as his personal party palace. He was, I recalled with sudden clarity, a new acquaintance of my father's. The pieces clicked. The acquisition had to be silent. Ravenhill Trust LLC was born an anonymous Delaware entity managed by a tight-lipped Chicago firm. The most critical part was the staff. I kept the existing team: Anya, the housekeeper and property manager, Marco, the chef, and the security detail. They were professionals who had been mistreated by Vale. I offered them a 30% raise and full benefits. The catch: a non-disclosure agreement so tight it would make a CIA agent wince. They were never to speak of me. They would refer to the owner only as the beneficiary or in emergencies. Ms. Rogers. They were not staff. They were custodians of a secret. They all signed. For 2 years, I have been a ghost in my own home. I clicked from holdings to the event calendar on the dashboard. There it was. Thursday, Thanksgiving, event private dinner, guests 18, host, by invitation of Grant Vale. Status, pending beneficiary approval. Grant, it seemed, was trying to pretend he still owned the place. He'd conned my father, and my father, desperate to climb, had conned my mother. I checked my email, an attachment from Anya, sent yesterday. Guest list, as provided by Mrs. Rogers. My mother had sent Anya her desired guest list. 18 names: my father, my mother, Evelyn, Grant Vale, and 14 assorted friends and connections they wanted to impress. My name was not on the list. I typed a single reply to Anya. Approve catering for 18. Chef Marco's discretion. My actions were mechanical. I navigated to the security tab. The access control system for La Palmera appeared. I created new entries. Guest Robert Rogers, guest Susan Rogers, guest Evelyn Rogers, guest Grant Vale. I assigned each of them a temporary access code. Then I set the permissions. Access level guest temporary. Area's outer gate, parking area, access denied main house, kitchen, master suites, loggia. The code would get them through the first gate. It would let them park. It would strand them on the beautifully landscaped gravel driveway, just outside the grand, unyielding front doors. This was not a social matter. It was a property matter. I opened a new, encrypted email draft to Lydia Ramos. Lydia is my notary, a mobile notary public who specializes in high-stakes corporate verification. She is fast, expensive, and looks like she could break rocks with her glare. Subject: Thanksgiving. Document verification body. Lydia, requesting your presence at the Catalina property this evening, 5 p.m. Please bring certified, notarized hard copies of the Ravenhill Trust ownership documents, the full deed of title for La Palmera, and the beneficiary designation form. I will require you to act as a witness if public verification becomes necessary. Your usual fee will be doubled for the holiday. A confirmation receipt appeared in my inbox 30 seconds later. Finally, I walked to my closet, past the suits and silk blouses. I pulled out a dark, cashmere blend sweater. From my desk, I retrieved a device no larger than a button, a body camera, high definition, audio-video, 12-hour battery, standard equipment for my investigators at the PSPSC. It is also unassailable evidence when used on one's own property. I threaded the lens through the dark knit, positioning it just below the collar. I tested the feed on my phone. Clear. If anyone denies what happens tonight, I will have the recording. If they try to spin the narrative, I will have the facts. This wasn't about revenge. Revenge is messy, emotional. It's what they expect of me. This was about auditing, a final review of a failed investment, the investment I had made in their approval. I would not humiliate them. I would not yell, or cry, or list my grievances. That was the old Melody, the one they dismissed. The new Melody simply presents the data. I would not deny them entry. I would simply let the system I built enforce the rules. They wanted a host. They would meet her. I would simply give them the truth, in the correct, undeniable, procedural order. The last time I went to Thanksgiving, I was still trying. It was 2 years ago. The pain in my back was a constant. Screaming noise, a fire I couldn't put out. I had driven 2 hours to their house, my spine feeling like a stack of broken glass with every bump in the road. I remember walking in, and my mother's face tightening. "Melody, you look terrible," she said. It wasn't a greeting. It was an accusation. I made it to the dinner table. My father was carving the turkey, talking about his golf handicap. I tried to join in, but I was gripping my water glass so hard, my knuckles were white. The conversation turned to plans for a ski trip. "I don't think I'll be able to ski this year," I said, my voice too quiet. "My doctor is talking about fusion." My mother's fork hit her plate with a sharp clink. The table went silent. "Melody," she said, her voice low and furious. "We are not doing this. Do not talk about your ailments at the table. It is Thanksgiving. We are trying to be happy." My father didn't even look at me. He just pointed the carving knife in my general direction. "Listen to your mother. Don't ruin the atmosphere." Ruin the atmosphere. I was a contamination. A week later, the narrative was cemented. Evelyn, my perfect sister, posted one of her truth videos, all soft focus and heartfelt sincerity. She spoke about the burden of negative family members and how some people are just addicted to attention. She talked about the bravery it takes to protect your energy from people who use their problems as a weapon. She never used my name. She didn't need to. The relatives who used to send sympathetic texts went silent. When I saw my aunts, they looked at me with a new, clinical skepticism. The family court had ruled I was faking it. The real verdict, however, came 7 months later. I remember the exact chemical smell of the post-anesthesia care unit. The ceiling was a grid of pale, water-stained tiles. My spine felt like it had been hollowed out and filled with hot cement. The fusion surgery had taken 6 hours. I fumbled for my phone on the rolling tray. The screen was black. I powered it on, wincing at the glare. My fingers, clumsy with medication, opened the Rogers Clan group chat. My mother had posted a picture of a new handbag. My father had sent a link about golf swings. Evelyn had loved the handbag. I scrolled up, past their chatter. I found my last message, sent from pre-op. "Surgery starting now. Will text when I'm out." It was gray, unread, and utterly alone. No one had replied. Not good luck, not thinking of you. I lay there, immobilized by surgical staples and anesthetic, and I felt the last brittle thread of hope I had been holding on to simply disintegrate. It was the cleanest, most absolute realization of my life. I was not part of their structure. I was alone. And if I was alone, I had to be my own advocate, my own witness. That was the day the lawyer in me consumed the daughter. My work at the Prairie State Professional Standards Council isn't about emotion. We don't argue. We present findings. We are trained to respond to accusations not with denial, but with documentation. When someone claims impropriety, you don't yell. I didn't do it. You provide the time-stamped building keycard log showing you were in a different city. You provide the notarized affidavit. You provide the metadata from the server. I began to apply that logic to my life. I stopped arguing about my pain. When an uncle questioned why I was still recovering, I emailed him the 30-page surgical summary, complete with post-operative infection risks. When my mother complained I was being dramatic, I forwarded her the billing statement for the titanium screws in my vertebrae. They learned to stop asking, and now they were trying to claim access to my property. They were challenging my standing. I would not meet them at the gate and cry about their text message. I would not list my grievances. I would let them hear the sound of the lock denying them. A clean digital click. Access denied based on insufficient permissions. They would have to argue with the server. The feeling rising in me wasn't the hot, messy surge of anger. Anger is what they expect. It's what the emotional daughter does. This was cold. This was finality. This was the end of a fiscal year. I was closing the books on the Melody Rogers failed investment account. After tonight, every role they had assigned me, the scapegoat, the invalid, the complication, would be terminated. I had arrived at La Palmera the night before, landing on the private strip 10 miles north. The villa was silent, dark, breathing in the cold Pacific air. It was mine. Anya, the housekeeper, had left the holiday decorations in their boxes. Respecting my privacy, I found a simple, elegant wreath made of silver-dusted pine cones. I hung it myself on the cool plaster wall of the main hallway. It was a single, quiet act of ownership. That one moment hanging a decoration in my own house felt more real, more peaceful, than any Thanksgiving I had ever been forced to endure. I'd spent the last year curating this place, in the grand dining room. The table was already being set for 18. I had commissioned the china myself. On the surface, the plates were elegant, ivory white, bearing a subtle LP monogram for La Palmera. But I had the ceramicist add a secret. On the underside of the charger, the maker's mark wasn't a logo. It was a tiny, fire-glazed MR Melody Rogers. Even the plates knew who held the deed. Being excluded from the table didn't feel like a personal slight anymore. It felt like a procedural summons. It triggered my professional instincts. Procedure. How will the uninvited parties be processed evidence? What documents are required to establish beneficial ownership witnesses who will observe the exchange I had to protect my staff? Anya, Chef Marco, the security team, they were my employees, and they were excellent. They did not deserve to be caught in the blast radius of this family implosion. I went to the study. I took 10 heavy cream-colored envelopes. For Anya, I sealed her holiday bonus in cash and an extra $5,000, with it, a note. For your professionalism, the events of this evening are a private, logistical matter. For Chef Marco, the same, and a note. For the meal I know will be perfect, regardless of the atmosphere. For the security team, bonuses for their discretion. I also prepared envelopes for my family. For my father, a receipt showing a $500 donation in his name to the Spinal Cord Injury Foundation. A tip for the meal he was expecting. For my mother, a similar receipt. This wasn't kindness. It was closure. It ensured no one could claim they were left stuck or indebted to me. I was settling all accounts. I found Marco in the kitchen. The air was already thick with the scent of thyme and simmering stock. "Chef," I said. He turned. "Ms. Rogers, preparations are on schedule." "Marco, we are expecting difficult guests. My family." His expression did not flicker. He had worked for Grant Vale. He understood difficult. "There may be confusion about the hosting," I said. "Things may become tense. My only instruction to you and your team is this: no matter what happens, no one's dignity is compromised. We serve the food. We are professional. We are the calm in the room." "Yes, Ms. Rogers," he said, turning back to his work. "Dignity. Understood." I checked the body camera one last time. The lens was invisible in the dark cashmere. I stood on the terrace, watching the sun begin to bleed into the ocean. Revenge isn't about shouting. It isn't about making people feel small. That is what they do. True revenge is simply placing the truth in the correct room, at the correct time, in front of the correct witnesses. The truth was the deed. The room was my dining hall. The time was dinner. I was ready. I was not a guest. I was the house. The California sun was sharp, too bright for November. Thanksgiving morning, I wasn't in the kitchen basting a turkey. I was in the security office, a small, climate-controlled room off the main garage. The villa's security system was military-grade. The wall of monitors showed me 4 different high-definition angles of the winding driveway. At 10:04 in the morning, my father's silver Mercedes glided up to the outer gate. I watched, my finger on the mouse, zooming in. My father typed the temporary guest code I had issued. The heavy wrought iron gate whirred open. I saw my mother clap her hands once, a small, triumphant gesture. They were in. Their relief was short-lived. The code only granted access to the driveway. They followed the signs to the designated guest parking, a gravel lot set a good 50 yards away from the main house. They were expecting a valet. They got a long walk. Anya, my housekeeper and property manager, was waiting for them on the front landing. She was immaculate in her simple, tailored gray uniform, her posture as unbending as granite. "Good morning," Anya said. Her voice was polite, pleasant, and utterly devoid of warmth. "Welcome to La Palmera." "We're here for the Thanksgiving dinner," my mother said, forcing a bright smile. "Of course," Anya replied. "We are currently awaiting confirmation from the host before seating anyone. The guest list has not been finalized. Please wait here." My mother's smile froze. "Wait. Here it's cold." "The host is very particular," Anya said, gesturing vaguely toward the stone benches. "I will return when I have an update." She turned and went back inside, the massive teak door closing with a heavy, definitive thud. My father looked furious, checking his watch. My mother immediately pulled out her phone. I zoomed the audio on the parabolic microphone aimed at the landing. She was calling my Aunt Patricia. "Trish, we're here. Oh my God. The villa. Well, it's $10 million. What do you expect? It's just breathtaking. Our new friend, Grant Vale. Yes, the Grant Vale. The billionaire. He's the host. And he's he's insisted we be here." A black sports car, low to the ground and obscenely loud, roared up the driveway, ignoring the guest parking sign and pulling right up to the front door. Grant Vale. He looked thinner than I remembered from the acquisition files, his skin papery and tight, his hair slicked back. He strode past my parents, ignoring them completely, and marched up to the main door, jabbing a code into the keypad beside it. The lock made a sound, a single, polite, electronic click, then 3 sharp, descending beeps. A red light flashed. Access denied. "What the hell?" Grant muttered. He tried the code again, punching the numbers harder. Click, beep, 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 red. "Anya," he yelled at the door. "The system is broken. Open the door." He slammed his palm against the biometric scanner. Access denied. "Why the hell won't my code work?" he roared, just as my sister, Evelyn, emerged from my father's Mercedes. Evelyn, of course, was already working. She had a portable ring light attached to her phone, bathing her face in synthetic perfection. She had the phone held high, panning to capture the house, the view, the drama. She was live streaming. Hey guys," she chirped, her voice cutting through the tense morning air. "Happy Thanksgiving. We are at this insane exclusive party in Catalina Bay. You guys, the energy here is everything. It's a $10 million compound." Comments flooded her screen, visible even on my monitor. "OMG Queen. Whose house? Adopt me. So posh." She was documenting her own exclusion. It was perfect. I clicked off the monitor and left the quiet hum of the security room. I took the staff corridor, a clean, white tunnel that ran behind the grand, public-facing rooms. I emerged into the heat and glorious noise of the kitchen. It smelled incredible. Brown butter and sage, thyme, onions caramelizing, the deep, rich scent of simmering stock. "Ms. Rogers," Chef Marco nodded, not breaking his rhythm as he meticulously trussed a turkey. The entire team was in motion, a ballet of professionals. "Marco, smells perfect," I said. "We are on schedule, Ms. Rogers," he replied. He and his team were, by contract, the only ones allowed to use my name. To everyone else, I was the beneficiary. "Anya," I said into my discreet earpiece, connected to the internal comms. "The guests are restless. They are, Ms. Rogers," her voice came back, calm as ice. "Mr. Vale is becoming colorful. His language is not appropriate. Security to the front loggia." I heard an internal alert from my head of security. One of my team, a large, impassive man named Ben, stepped out onto the landing. He was dressed in a simple black polo shirt, but he was built like the door he was guarding. "Sir, we need you to wait in the designated area. You are blocking the entrance." My mother, father, and Evelyn were now clustered by the front door, confused, cold, and embarrassed. I watched them through the one-way glass in the foyer. They looked small. "Anya," I said into my comms, "please show our guests to the outer loggia, the one overlooking the sea. It's time to stop the performance. And Mr. Vale. Especially Mr. Vale." A moment later, I watched her open the door. "The host has requested you wait on the loggia. We will bring you refreshments." They were herded like confused sheep onto the stone patio, a beautiful, open-air space trapped between the locked house and the 1,000-foot drop to the Pacific. Anya's assistant brought out a tray. On it were 6 glasses of lukewarm water, not champagne, not coffee, water. I walked past the foyer window. My mother saw me. I saw her eyes track me. I was wearing my simple black cashmere sweater and dark pants. I saw the calculation in her gaze, my plain clothes, my presence inside. Her eyes dismissed me in half a second. I was a caterer. I was event staff. She turned back to my father, her face a mask of social anxiety, furious that the help was wandering around. The warm water was the final insult. Grant Vale, who had been promised a triumphant return to his old haunt, threw his glass onto the stone tiles. It shattered. "This is ridiculous," he yelled. "Anya, I am the host. You work for me. I will sue you. I will sue this entire house. I'll have your job. Do you hear me?" That was my cue. I pressed the button on the wall panel. The massive, floor-to-ceiling glass door separating the foyer from the loggia slid open with a whisper. The group went silent. They all stared. I stepped out onto the loggia. The cold wind felt good. "Melody," my father said, his voice a mix of confusion and irritation. "What are you doing here? Are you working this party?" I ignored him. I looked directly at Grant Vale. "Mr. Vale," I said. My voice was calm, and the stone walls amplified it perfectly. "Mel," my mother started. "Melody, don't make a scene." "Mr. Vale," I repeated. "You seem to be operating under a misapprehension. I suggest you reread Article 7 of the Asset Management Contract, the one you signed 6 months ago when you forfeited this property." Grant's face went from red to a sickly white. He knew that contract. He knew the clause about misrepresentation. "Who gave you the authority to be here?" he stammered, trying to regain his footing. "Who are you?" I took a step closer. "I'm the one who reads the fine print." "Grant?" "Who gave you the authority?" he roared. Desperate, I let the question hang in the air, the sound of the surf crashing far below. "The beneficiary," I said. "What is going on?" Evelyn, ever the documentarian, had her phone up. She was filming the whole exchange, the ring light making her eyes look manic. She turned the camera from Grant to me, zooming in on my face. "Melody, what are you talking about?" The comments on her live stream exploded. I could read them upside down from where I stood. "Is that your sister?" "Wait, I'm confused. Is she the host?" "OMG, the drama. That's the girl they said was faking." My mother looked horrified. "Evelyn, put that down, Melody. Stop causing trouble." You're upsetting Mr. Vale. I didn't answer. I didn't confirm or deny. I just stood there, the body camera under my sweater recording every stunned expression. Grant, in a moment of pure, dumb reflex, went back to the keypad by the door I had just walked through and punched his old code again. Click, beep, beep, beep. The sound was sharp, definitive. Access denied. I let that sound be my answer. I let the tension stretch. Let them stand in the house I owned, looking at me like I was the one who didn't belong. The reveal wasn't ready. Not yet. First, they had to understand the lock. I did not invite them into the warmth of the main house. Not yet. I turned from the cold, windy loggia back toward the foyer. Please, I said, my voice cutting through their stunned silence. I gestured not to the main house, but to a different set of glass doors leading to an enclosed terrace. Let's move to the solarium. It's out of the wind. We seem to have a procedural matter to discuss. The solarium was a beautiful trap. A room made almost entirely of glass, perched on the edge of the cliff, furnished with minimalist, uncomfortable teak benches. It was a place for unverified guests, an observation room. Anya, moving with silent efficiency, ushered them in. My father, my mother, Evelyn, and Grant Vale. They followed, a confused, angry flock, their social posturing utterly shattered. They were cold, and this room was, at least, shielded from the wind. They stood clustered together, a defensive unit, refusing to sit. I followed them in. Anya was already standing by a simple table. On the table rested a polished silver tray. On the tray sat 5 thick, heavy, cream-colored envelopes. Please sit, I said. They ignored me. I walked to the tray. There seems to be some confusion regarding the guest list, I said. My voice was as neutral as if I were reading the minutes of a zoning board meeting. I find it's always best to start with the original documentation. I picked up the envelopes. The cardstock was heavy, expensive. Robert Rogers, I said, reading the clean black ink on the first. I handed it to my father. Susan Rogers, I handed it to my mother. Evelyn Rogers, I handed it to my sister. Grant Vale, I handed it to him. The last one was simply labeled Guests of Susan Rogers. I left it on the tray. What is this, Melody? My father demanded, his voice tight. We don't have time for your games. We're cold, and we're guests of Mr. Vale. It's not a game, I said. It's a filing error. Please open the envelope. They tore them open, my mother with a frantic, ripping motion, Grant Vale with a sneer, slicing it open with his fingernail. Evelyn, naturally, was filming the envelope before opening it. Inside, the first document was a heavy, embossed invitation. The beneficiary of Ravenhill Trust, LLC, requests the pleasure of your company for Thanksgiving dinner, 4 o'clock, La Palmera, Catalina Bay. At the bottom was a security QR code. I don't understand, my mother said, her voice small. We never received this. Oh, you did, I said. I have the server logs. It was delivered to your inbox 3 weeks ago. I'm afraid the system routed it to your promotions folder. I allowed a small, tight smile. The filters on this server are extremely aggressive towards spam. Grant was sputtering. This is just an invitation from some trust. It's meaningless. This is my event. Please check the second document in the envelope, I said. They fumbled for the next sheet. This was not elegant cardstock. It was thin, almost translucent legal paper, a photocopy, but the stamp on the upper right corner was dark, embossed, and undeniably real. Certified, true copy of record. My father, who had at least seen a contract in his life, went pale. He whispered the words as he read them. Hereby grants the property known as La Palmera, parcel number 47B-902, County of Los Angeles, to Ravenhill Trust, LLC. My mother scanned the page, lost in the legalese, looking for a loophole. I don't understand, she said, her voice rising. This is just Lawyer nonsense. It's rather simple, I said. Keep reading. I pointed to the last page in her hand. Declaration of Beneficiary for Ravenhill Trust, LLC, a single name, typed and signed. Beneficiary Melody Rogers. The silence in the glass room was absolute. The only sound was the distant, crashing surf, 1,000 feet below. My mother let out a high, strained laugh. It was a terrible sound. Melody, this is a joke. A very elaborate, very cruel prank. You forged this. She looked at Grant, desperate for an ally. This is just some legal joke, right? A sick joke. It's just a piece of paper, Grant said, attempting to regain his bluster, though his voice was hollow. It doesn't mean anything. That's the trouble with documents, I said, turning toward the glass door to the main house. They're so often misunderstood without the proper context. I pressed a small, discreet button on the wall panel. The door slid open. A woman stepped out. She was not staff. She wore a severe dark blue suit, and her hair was pulled back so tightly it looked painful. She carried a locked aluminum briefcase and a small, digital notary's stamp. Lydia, I said. Thank you for coming. Ms. Rogers, Lydia Ramos replied. Her voice sounded like she ate gravel for breakfast. She set her briefcase on the teak table, clicking the locks open with 2 sharp snaps. This is Lydia Ramos, I announced to the room. She is a licensed and bonded notary public for the state of California, specializing in real property verification. My mother just stared. What? Lydia, I said. Could you please verify the documents these individuals are holding? Lydia Ramos pulled an identical set of papers from her briefcase. I have here the certified true copies, filed directly with the Los Angeles County Recorder's Office, she said, her voice a powerful monotone that filled the room. The deed of title was recorded at 8:03 a.m. on May 12, 2022. The beneficiary designation for the holding trust, Ravenhill Trust, LLC, was signed by Ms. Rogers and witnessed by me on that same date. She held up her digital stamp. The signature is valid. The stamp is real. The chain of title is clean. The parcel number 47B-902 legally, finally, and unequivocally belongs to the trust, of which Ms. Rogers is the sole and exclusive beneficiary. Grant Vale lunged forward, his face a mask of purple rage. This is theft. It's a lie. I had first right of refusal. It's in the contract. I can buy it back. You could have, I said calmly. I reached into Lydia's open briefcase. She handed me a third, single-page document. I held it up for Grant to see. This is the waiver, I said, tapping the paper. The one you signed 6 months ago. You waived your right of first refusal in exchange for a 30-day extension on your debt reconciliation. An extension, I might add, that you defaulted on anyway. I handed him the paper. That is your signature, is it not, Grant? He stared at it. His entire body seemed to deflate. He knew he was done. Evelyn's hand, however, had not wavered. The phone was still up, the ring light still blazing, pointed right at us. Is this scripted? She asked, her voice skeptical, trying to frame this as content, as a performance. This is insane. Are you acting? Is this for a show? Lydia Ramos turned her cold, professional gaze on my sister. Ma'am, Lydia said, you are currently filming on private property. Continued recording of a private legal verification without the consent of all parties, specifically the owner, may constitute a tortious invasion of privacy. I would advise you to consult California's recording laws before you proceed. Evelyn's face faltered. The threat of a lawsuit was the only language she truly understood. She lowered the phone, but she didn't stop recording. Her thumb hovered over the screen. My father, speechless, stared at my mother. His mouth was open. He had built his entire Thanksgiving on a lie from Grant Vale, and now he was standing, uninvited, in his negative daughter's $10 million glass box. The sound of the ocean, the rhythmic shh of the waves, filled the silence. It sounded like a final judgment, I looked at the group, my family, my former employer. Now, I said, my voice softening, we have a procedural choice to make. I gestured to Lydia's briefcase. She produced 4 more documents and a simple, elegant fountain pen. This is the guest agreement for La Palmera, I said. It's standard for all private events. I slid one toward my father. It's very simple. You are invited to stay for Thanksgiving dinner. You are invited to sit at my table, in my house, but you must agree to the house rules. Rules? My mother whispered, her voice laced with fresh offense. Rule 1, I said, tapping the paper. No visitor may live stream, record, or photograph any other guest or staff member inside the main house without their explicit written consent. I looked directly at Evelyn. Rule 2, no guest may use language intended to belittle, mock, or dismiss another guest's physical or mental health. I looked directly at my mother. Rule 3, all discussions must remain respectful. The host, that is, me, reserves the right to end any conversation deemed abusive or disruptive. If you violate the terms, you agree to leave immediately. I uncapped the pen and set it down. Sign, and you can come inside. Chef Marco's turkey smells wonderful. Refuse, and you are free to leave. Anya will validate your parking. This is extortion, Grant roared, finding his voice again. You think you can do this? I'll call the press. I'll call every reporter I know. I'll tell them how you stole this house. I'll ruin you. I smiled. It was a cold, thin smile. You could, Grant, but I would, again, refer you to your own legal history. I pulled a folded document from my sweater pocket. This is the ruling from Vail versus Business Insider, the defamation case you lost. Specifically, the judge's note about your established pattern of willful misrepresentation. I held his gaze. If you make one statement about me or this property that is not factually 100% true, the Ravenhill Trust will sue you for slander per se, and unlike you, our legal fund is not leveraged. We will bleed you dry, Grant, and you know it. His face went white. He was a gambler who had just been told the house always wins. No one moved. No one picked up the pen. My mother stared at the paper as if it were a snake. To sign it was to admit I was the host, to admit I was right, to admit they were the guests. Here on my terms. I'm not signing this, Evelyn said, her voice shaking with rage. You're just trying to humiliate us. No, Evelyn, I said. You were humiliated the moment you arrived, begging for access to a house that wasn't yours. I am offering you a seat at the table. I am offering you dignity. I waited. The silence stretched. The smell of thyme and roasting garlic wafted in from the kitchen. It was agonizingly good. No one moved. I smiled. A real smile this time. No, that's fine. I picked up the pen myself and neatly stacked the unsigned agreements. The choice is made. I gestured to the open-air loggia they had just left. Please, feel free to use the gardens and the loggia for your photographs. The lighting is excellent this time of day. Anya will keep the water glasses full. I turned and walked to the door leading to the main house. Lydia held it open for me. The dining table, I said, pausing to look back at them, is inside. It's reserved for family, the real family. I left them in the glass box. I stepped back inside the main house. The glass door slid shut, locking with a quiet, decisive hiss, sealing off the solarium. The difference was instantaneous. The solarium was cold, all hard surfaces, and the silent, accusing wind. The main house was a cocoon. The air was warm, thick with the scent of roasted turkey basted in brown butter, slow-cooked onions, and the sweet woody spice of nutmeg from the sweet potato gratin. The floors were heated limestone. Soft light came from recessed fixtures, warming the natural wood and plush, cream-colored rugs. Chef Marco was in the dining room, a long, magnificent hall with a wall of glass overlooking the sea at dusk. He was placing serving spoons. The table was set for 6. He didn't look up, but he sensed my presence. Ms. Rogers, they were not receptive. No, Marco, they were not. A difficult service. Then, he straightened a fork. He paused, holding a silver gravy boat. Shall I set a small, separate table in the solarium for the influencer and her party? I smiled. It was the first truly relaxed smile of the day. No, Marco, that won't be necessary, but I do need you to add 3 more place settings to the main table. He looked up, confused. The table was already small. 3 more but. Who? For you, I said. For Anya, and for Ben, from security, who has had to listen to Grant Vale yell for an hour. Anyone who works in this house today, who contributes to this meal, deserves a seat at the table. That is the new house rule. Marco stared at me for a beat, his professional mask dropping. A look of profound, quiet respect replaced it. Yes, Ms. Rogers, he said. He turned and went to the sideboard. I will get the good silver. Through the glass wall of the solarium, I could see my mother. She was watching me. Her hands were clenched at her sides. She saw Marco adding place settings. She saw me directing Anya to a seat. Her face was a storm of pure, unadulterated fury. This was not the exclusive, high-profile event she had bragged about. She was trapped in the unverified guest zone, and the help was being seated at the head table. The exclusivity she so desperately craved was happening, and she was on the wrong side of the glass. Just as Anya was about to sit, the formal chime of the real front door, the one inside the foyer, echoed. Anya moved to answer it. A moment later, she returned, leading a small, elderly couple. Mr. and Mrs. Ares. They were my nearest neighbors, a retired astronomy professor and his wife, a botanist. They were the only other people I had actually invited. Melody, my dear, Mr. Ares said, his voice a warm, gentle rumble. We were so worried the gate was confusing. There's a very angry group of people in your glass room out there. Business, I'm afraid. Mr. Ares, I said, walking over and taking both of Mrs. Ares's hands. It's all sorted now. I'm so glad you're here. Please, you must be hungry. I settled them at the table, fussing over Mrs. Ares's chair, making sure she was comfortable, her back away from any potential draft. I poured her a glass of water myself, and she smiled, her eyes bright and kind. We began to talk, quietly, about the changing color of the sea. From the corner of my eye, I watched the solarium. Grant Vale had broken away from my family. He was pacing the length of the glass room, his phone clamped to his ear, his back to everyone. On the security monitor tablet I'd placed on the sideboard, I could see the log, Vale, G outgoing call, duration 0430, audio not recorded. He was plotting. He was always plotting. Marco and Ben, the head of security, brought out the food. The turkey was carved, the skin a perfect, deep mahogany. The stuffing was studded with chestnuts and sage. The cranberry sauce was dark, made with port wine and orange zest. Mr. Ares took a sip of the deep red wine Anya had poured. Good heavens, Melody, he said, holding the glass to the light. This is a truly remarkable Cabernet Sauvignon. It's not a local vintage, is it? No, I said, taking a sip of my own. It's from a small place called Silver Currant Vineyard, a little passion project of mine. I hold a minority stake. This, apparently, was too much for Evelyn. She had been filming her parents' misery, trying to create a narrative of victimhood, now furious at being ignored. She stormed up to the glass wall of the solarium. She couldn't get in, but she slammed her open palm against the glass. It thudded, the sound deadened by the thick, hurricane-proof panes. We all turned. She had her phone up, the ring light blazing, pointing it at me. "This is insane," she shouted, her voice a muffled, tinny screech through the glass. "You can't do this. Grant and I just closed a 6-figure advertising campaign. We are supposed to be celebrating. We are the VIPs. I looked at her, this perfect stranger who was my sister. I raised my voice, just enough to carry. Does the contract have a morals clause? Evelyn, you should probably check. Her mouth snapped shut. Then it was my mother's turn. She surged forward, pushing Evelyn aside. Her face was pressed against the glass. Her expensive makeup smudged. She looked desperate. Melody, this is cruel, she wailed, her voice cracking. We are your family. We came all this way, only the top daughters, the successful ones, get to sit at the big table, and you gave our seats to them. Her gesture was wild, encompassing the kind, elderly neighbors, the stoic security guard, and the brilliant chef who had just returned with a tray of steaming, yeast-risen rolls. Chef Marco stopped. He looked at my mother, at her face contorted in rage and envy, pressed against the glass. He didn't look at me. He spoke clearly, his voice filling the warm, peaceful dining room. At this house, ma'am, he said, loud enough for all of us, and perhaps even for her, to hear. The kind people sit at the big table. He placed the rolls down, and we continued our meal. A soft ping chimed from the kitchen. The timer. Anya nodded. The pies, Ms. Rogers? Thank you, Anya. While Marco served the main course to our guests, I went to the kitchen. The pumpkin pies were perfect. The bourbon pecan pie was dark and bubbling. I cut 2 generous slices of the pumpkin. I placed them on the LP monogram china. I found 2 sets of the heavy, sterling silver dessert forks. I handed the plates to Anya. Anya, I said quietly, please take these to my parents in the solarium. The wind is picking up. They should have something warm. It was a gesture of peace, an offering. They could have eaten it, and I would have sent out more. Anya returned a minute later, her face impassive. Mrs. Rogers refused the plates. She said the pie was a pathetic consolation prize. Mr. Rogers, however, asked if I could bring him a coffee. Black? Of course, I said. And please bring a blanket for Mrs. Aris. I think she's feeling a chill. Soft jazz, a saxophone and a quiet piano, was playing from the house speakers. My mother had stopped pressing her face to the glass and was now sitting on a hard teak bench, her arms crossed, shivering. My father stood by the glass, sipping his coffee, looking at the floor. Evelyn, on the other hand, was back in business. She had found a new angle. She was spinning a new narrative. She was pacing and talking to her phone, her voice animated, tears welling in her eyes. You guys, I'm just heartbroken. My sister, she's always been difficult. She's locked us out. This is all about her trauma. She's obsessed with being a victim, and she's ruining Thanksgiving for all of us. But I am choosing to rise above. I am sending her love and light. I watched her. This performance of rising above from a glass cage she had walked into willingly. I took a bite of the most delicious stuffing I had ever tasted. I smiled at Mrs. Aris, who was telling a story about discovering a new species of coastal fern. A strange, unfamiliar feeling settled over me. It was peace. Here, in this room, was a proper Thanksgiving. Kind people, wonderful food, intelligent conversation, and a profound sense of gratitude. And just on the other side of the glass, in the cold, was the family that had assured me I was the negative energy, the complication, who would ruin the atmosphere. They were outside, looking in, not because I had locked them out, but because they had refused to sign the one document that cost nothing a promise of basic human respect. They had, in the end, excluded themselves. The meal inside was proceeding with a civilized grace. Mr. Aris was deep in a story about the migratory patterns of whales, and Mrs. Aris was praising Chef Marco's parsnip puree. The jazz music was a soft, sophisticated cushion of sound. My work phone, the one I kept separate from my life, vibrated in the pocket of my slacks. It was a single, discreet buzz. I glanced at it. A secure channel message, not a text. From Director, PSPSC, Subject RE Vale, G, EOD Deadline, Body, Requesting Confirmation of Service. Vale has until 6 p.m. Pacific to respond to the subpoena Deuces Tecum. His counsel is already claiming improper service. Confirm receipt. I typed a single word and hit send. Received. Lydia Ramos was still on the premises, as requested. She was in my study, a silent, professional specter, enjoying her own catered turkey dinner and billing me by the hour. She wasn't just my notary, she was a licensed process server, and she had been waiting for the opportune moment. Today was the deadline. The Prairie State Professional Standards Council, my own organization, had been investigating Grant Vail for 6 months for a massive, multi-state conflict of interest scheme. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a closing. Grant's frantic attempt to host this party, to attach himself to my father's minor political connections, to seem powerful and connected, it was all a desperate, pathetic show for the auditors. He was trying to clean his reputation, as the outline of his life was being red-penned by my colleagues. I had no intention of mixing my work with this dinner. I would not reveal my position. I would not use my authority. This was my home, and he was a trespasser on multiple fronts. I would let Lydia serve the papers as he left. This was a family matter, not a federal one. I put the phone away and returned my attention to Mrs. Eris. But of course, a man drowning will always try to pull everyone else under with him. Outside, in the solarium, Grant Vail had clearly received his own set of bad news. His frantic phone calls had ended. He strode back to my family, his face a thundercloud. Evelyn, still dutifully streaming her hostage narrative, turned the camera on him. "Grant, what's wrong? What are they saying in there?" Grant, needing to re-establish his dominance, saw the camera and saw his audience. He forced a smile that was all teeth. "Don't you worry about a thing, Evelyn," he boomed, his voice loud enough to be faintly heard through the glass. He put a proprietary arm around her shoulder. "That little bitch in there? That's just a clerical error. A nobody. She thinks she's powerful. She's nothing." He was performing, trying to convince himself as much as my sister. "You," he said, tapping her on the nose. "You stick with me. This is just a temporary setback. I'm going to back your brand. I'm going to get you that national television spot. We'll show her what real power, real influence, looks like." Evelyn's eyes went wide. This was it, the payoff for her humiliation. She forgot her victim narrative instantly. She pivoted, her face alight with the thrill of the hustle. "Oh my God. You guys," she gushed into her phone, her voice shaking with excitement. "Did you hear that Grant Vail himself? This is what I've been talking about. This is manifesting. This is what happens when you protect your energy, Grant. You are just the best." She was so high on the promise, so desperate, that the words just spilled out. "This is going to be epic. I mean, the brand was already on board, but when they saw those gifts you sent over, wow. When the brand manager opened that box and saw the new release platinum watches and that $5,000 handbag, they knew you were serious. That's how you get a deal done. Guys, you show them the value." She had just, on a live stream with over 3,000 viewers, admitted to a massive, undisclosed pay-for-play scheme, an FTC violation so blatant it was almost art. Grant's face went from rage to sheer, unadulterated panic. "They were borrowed," he hissed, his voice a venomous whisper. "They were for a shoot. They were borrowed. Turn that damn thing off." He was too late. Evelyn's face crumpled as she realized what she'd done. From the foyer, where she had been standing and observing, Lydia Ramos simply tapped a new note into her phone. "Witnessed, FTC advertising violation, 7:04 p.m. The entire pathetic drama was imploding under the weight of its own desperation. My mother, however, had missed the subtlety of this new disaster. She was still fixed on the primary insult being locked out. She couldn't bear it. She walked up to the glass wall that separated us, her face a pale, strained mask. She didn't knock. She just stood there, staring. I felt the entire table's energy shift. Mrs. Eris's story faltered. "Excuse me," I said quietly. I stood and walked to the door. I pressed the panel. The glass slid open with a hiss, letting in a rush of cold, salty air, and my mother's palpable misery. "This has to stop," I said, my voice low. "You're enjoying this," she whispered. Her hands were shaking. "You're torturing us. I am eating dinner. Mother, you were invited to join us. You refused. This house," she gestured. "This power. It's ugly. It's made you ugly." The accusation was so familiar, so worn, that it had no sting. "Mother," I said, cutting her off, "I have a question. Just one. Let's forget the house. Let's forget the money. Let's say I was just me. The Melody you've always known. But this was my house, my small, normal house, and I was the host. And I told you there was enough room, enough food for everyone, with room to spare." Her eyes flickered. "Would you still have left my name off the list? Would you still have told me not to come? That I was too negative?" This was the point, the only point that mattered. She looked away, her gaze finding the black, restless ocean. She was trapped. She couldn't say yes, because it would make her a monster. She couldn't say no, because we both knew it was a lie. She finally said, her voice small and breaking. "I just wanted one nice day. That's all. One perfect day. Without complications. Without your sadness. Without having to explain you to people." I let the words land. Explain me. "A nice day," I repeated. The words felt like grit in my mouth. A nice day isn't built by gassing someone out of the room. It's not built on an exclusion zone. It's built on a foundation. You can't have a nice day by sawing off one of the table legs and hoping the whole thing doesn't collapse. I sighed. The wind was making my spine ache. "This is the last offer. There are two choices." My voice was flat, procedural. "Option 1. The four of you sign the house rules. Right now. You come inside. You sit down. You apologize to Mr. and Mrs. Aris for the disruption, and we eat dinner, as a family, quietly, and then you leave. Option 2, I have Anya bring your coats. You can finish your live stream on the patio, and Ben will escort you to your cars. This ends, in any case, in the next 30 minutes. I saw the flicker in her eyes. The warmth from the house was rolling out, smelling of pecan pie and coffee. She was cold. She was humiliated. She was tempted. She looked back at my father, who was standing there, helpless. He saw her waver, and he tried to help, and in doing so, he destroyed her. "Susan," my father pleaded, not to me, but to her. "Susan, just sign it. It doesn't matter. Just sign the paper." "It does matter, Robert," she hissed back. "She's humiliating us in front of everyone." "Susan, please," he said, his voice a low, desperate whine. Your mother wanted to wear her dress for the photo. In the main room. Just sign the paper so she can get the picture." A dead, perfect, crystalline silence. He said it. He actually said it. It wasn't about family. It wasn't about Thanksgiving. It wasn't about connections or a nice day. It was about the photo. It was about wearing an expensive dress in a room they didn't own. To project an image of a life they didn't have. To people who didn't matter. Even Evelyn, still streaming, looked horrified. She knew that was the wrong thing to say. Grant Vale, who had been listening, actually snorted in derision. My mother closed her eyes, her face crumpling. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. My father's admission, his pathetic, hollow plea, hung in the cold air, more damning than any legal document I could ever produce. I let the silence stretch. I let them listen to the echo of their own, empty ambition. Finally, I looked at my father. "The main room," I said. I stepped back. The glass door slid shut, and I locked it. I walked back to the dining table, leaving them outside in the cold, with nothing but their reflections in the glass. My father's words hung in the air, a devastating admission of their hollow priorities. "So she can get the picture." My mother seemed to shrink, the last bit of her indignant fury vanishing, replaced by a deep, shuddering humiliation. She had been exposed, not by me, but by her own husband. The four of them stood in the cold, glass-walled solarium. Defeated, my mother turned. She walked to the intercom panel by the locked door. She pressed the button. A soft, electronic chime sounded in the warm dining room. I paused, my hand on Mrs. Eris's chair. "Melody," my mother's voice came through the speaker. It was thin, cracked, and utterly devoid of its earlier strength. We will sign the agreement. Please, let us in." I did not answer the intercom. I simply nodded once to Anya. Anya retrieved the clipboard with the 4 agreements and the fountain pen. She unlocked the solarium door. The hiss of the seal breaking felt final. She did not walk in. She simply stood in the doorway, holding the clipboard out. I watched as my father, eager to end the standoff, stepped forward and signed his name without reading it. My mother followed, her hand shaking so badly she could barely form the letters. Evelyn, her face a mask of sullen fury, jabbed the pen at the paper, signing with a vicious slash. And then, Grant. He glared at Anya, grabbed the pen, and scribbled his name. "Thank you," Anya said, her voice as neutral as a clear sky. She took the clipboard, stepped back, and held the door open to the main house. "The guest powder room is down the hall to your left, if you would like to freshen up," she announced. "The host is seating you now." They filed in, one by one. They were not triumphant. They were a defeated army being processed. They brought the chill of the outside in with them. The dining room, which had been so warm and peaceful, instantly grew cold. Mr. and Mrs. Eris looked on with polite, concerned expressions. Chef Marco and Ben stood by the sideboard, their postures professional, their faces unreadable. "Father, Mother, Evelyn," I said, gesturing to the 4 empty seats. "Please, sit." They sat. They looked at the plates, the LP monogram, the heavy silver. This was the table they had wanted. Evelyn, on pure muscle memory, placed her phone on the table, angled toward her. Anya was there in an instant, holding a small, polished, silver-inlaid box. "What is this?" Evelyn muttered. Her eyes narrowed. "A signal-blocking Faraday box, ma'am," Anya said. "As per the agreement you just signed." "You have got to be kidding me," Evelyn hissed. "Rule 1, I said, not looking up from my plate. "No live streaming, no recording. Your phone, Evelyn, or your coat. Your choice." She snatched the phone, her face burning, and dropped it into the velvet-lined box. Anya closed the lid, and a small green light on its side turned red. The signal was dead. I looked at the 4 of them, my new, captive guests. "Welcome. Now that the formalities are settled, the rules for this part of the evening are simple, 3 of them, so everyone can follow. 1. We will be respectful to one another. 2. We will not use personal attacks or abusive language. 3. We will not, under any circumstances, discuss the perceived negative energy of another guest's health condition." My gaze rested on my mother. She stared at her empty plate. "Now," I said, turning to my father, who was white-knuckling his water glass. "Father, you were so eager for this meal. The turkey is carved, but we haven't offered a word of thanks." He looked at me, confused. "What? A word of thanks? For the meal? For the reunion?" I smiled. "It seems like a moment you are uniquely qualified to handle. Please." This was a language he understood. He saw a chance to reclaim the narrative, to regain his status as the patriarch. He stood up. He was shaky, but the performer in him took over. He picked up his water glass. To family," he began, his voice finding its familiar, smooth cadence. "To finding our way back to the table. It has been a complicated day, but what matters is that we are here, together, united, as a family should be. We are thankful for this bounty, and for this reconciliation." It was a brilliant performance. Smooth, eloquent, and a complete, utter lie. He sat down, looking satisfied. That was beautiful, Father, I said into the silence. United? I like that word. I set my fork down. The tink against the china was loud. Since you've brought up the subject of unity, I continued, my voice conversational, I'd like to call a point of order, a minute of truth before the pie, just to clear the record, as we are all here, united. I looked at my mother. I looked at Evelyn. Regarding the family group chat and the decision to exclude me from this holiday, I am not accusing. I am simply verifying the minutes of the meeting. Who made the motion? Melody, my mother whispered, her face pale. Don't. We signed the paper. This is hostile. No, Mother. This is clarification. The truth, delivered respectfully, is not hostile. It is simply the truth. Who suggested it? No one spoke. I will ask again, I said, my voice patient, soft. Who proposed I be uninvited? My mother's eyes welled up. I was trying to protect the day, she stammered. I suggested it. I just suggested it might be easier. Thank you, I said. Motion proposed by Mother. And who seconded the motion? I turned to Evelyn. It was a like, Evelyn burst out, her voice shrill. It was just a heart emoji. It doesn't mean anything. It's not a legal vote. In your world, Evelyn, a like is currency. It's an endorsement. It is a signature. So, Mother proposed, Evelyn seconded, and Father. I looked at him. You were silent. In a board meeting, silence is consent. The motion passed. 3-0. I was excluded. Melody, what is the point of this? My father asked, his voice shaking. The point, I said, is gratitude. I reached to the sideboard beside me, to a small, lacquer box. I pulled out 3 thick, cream-colored envelopes, not the legal ones. These were different. I slid one across the table to my father, one to my mother, one to Evelyn. What is this now? My mother asked, her hand trembling. More rules. No, I said. They're thank you cards. They stared. Then, slowly, they opened them. Inside, on heavy cardstock, was a single sentence, handwritten in my clear, precise script. My father read it aloud, his voice hollow. Thank you. Thank you for showing me I had outgrown the expectations. Thank you for giving me the clarity to build a new table. I looked at them. My family. My united family. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. I mean it, I said. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. You set me free. I would not be here, at this table, in this house, if you had not made it so clear I did not belong at yours. The silence was absolute. Grant Vale, who had been watching this with growing, apoplectic rage, slammed his hand on the table. The silver jumped. Mrs. Aris let out a tiny, frightened gasp. Enough! He roared, his face a deep, mottled purple. I am sick of this psychodrama. This is a business dinner. I am not interested in your daddy issues. I want to speak to the investor. I know you're not the principal. Melody, you're just a glorified secretary. A front. I want to meet the owner of Ravenhill Trust. Get him on the phone, now. He was desperate. His last play. I didn't flinch. I just looked at him. You want to speak to the owner, Grant? I asked. The owner is speaking to you. I turned my head, not to Grant, but to the doorway of the study, where Lydia Ramos was standing, as patient as a stone. Lydia, I said, I believe Mr. Vale had a deadline, 6 p.m. Was it not? 6 p.m., Ms. Rogers, Lydia confirmed, stepping into the light of the dining room. It is now 6:07. Then Mr. Vale is in default of his response, I said. Lydia moved, her sensible heeled shoes making no sound on the stone. She was no longer just a notary. She was an officer of the court. She pulled a thick, blue-backed, ribbon-tied document from her briefcase. "Grant Vale," she announced, her voice a formal, cutting monotone that filled the room. "You are hereby served with this subpoena duces tecum, issued by the Prairie State Professional Standards Council, compelling the immediate production of all financial records, communications, and ledgers related to case file 2024-B77. She slapped the document down on the table, right on top of his empty plate. "Sign here," she said, holding out a pen. "To acknowledge receipt." Grant stared at the document. He stared at the name, PSPSC. He knew it. My mother looked at me, her eyes wide, a new, more profound terror dawning. "Melody. What is this? Are you involved in his legal problems?" "I'm senior counsel at the PSPSC. Mother," I said quietly, finally picking up my wine glass. "I don't get involved in problems. I review them." Grant, his face white as paper, pointed a shaking finger at me. This is entrapment. It's a conflict of interest. She set me up." "I'm on vacation, Grant," I said, taking a sip. "This is just an audit, and my colleague, Ms. Ramos, is simply serving the papers, which you are required to sign for." "I'm not signing," he snarled. "Refusal to sign is noted at 6:08 p.m., Lydia said, making a note on her own copy. "My body camera has recorded the service. It is valid. This is not a criminal matter. Mr. Vale, not yet. It is a civil inquiry. No one is being publicly named." The shift in the room was profound. My family, who thought this was a domestic squabble, were suddenly, terrifyingly out of their depth. They had come here to play status games, and they had just walked into a federal-level hearing. My father was no longer looking at his negative daughter. He was looking at a woman who commanded people who served subpoenas. Grant Vale, defeated, shaking, picked up the document. The game had changed. The rules I had set respect, order, no humiliation were no longer my rules. They were the law. "Well," I said, setting my wine glass down. "A lot of business for a holiday." I smiled at Mrs. Aris. "I do apologize." I turned to Chef Marco. "Marco, the pie. I think we've all earned it." The dinner continued. But the storm was no longer on the horizon. It was here. The pecan pie was served. Chef Marco, with a final, subtle flourish, had added a dollop of bourbon-spiked whipped cream to each plate. We ate in a new, stunned silence. The Arises, bless them, tried to make small talk about the pie crust, but the tension in the room was a physical thing, a high-frequency vibration. Grant Vale sat staring at the subpoena as if it were a coiled snake. His plate was untouched. His phone, which he'd placed beside him, buzzed. It didn't ring, just a hard, insistent, angry vibration against the oak table. He picked it up. He stared at the screen. The color drained from his face. The blotchy, mottled purple of his rage was replaced by a gray, papery, ashen terror. His hand was visibly shaking. He fumbled the phone, nearly dropping it as he tried to make a call. His fingers, slick with a sudden, cold sweat, kept hitting the wrong icons. Finally, he connected. "David, what the hell is this?" he hissed, his voice a panicked, strangled whisper. "What do you mean?" "A judicial freeze on which account?" There was a pause. Grant's eyes darted around the table. Seeing all of us watching him, he looked trapped. "What do you mean? All of them?" he suddenly roared, leaping to his feet. "The operating accounts. The offshore. You tell them they can't do that. That's illegal." He listened, his body seeming to crumble in on itself. "The PSPSC? An emergency injunction, already, but... He looked at me. His eyes were no longer angry. They were terrified. I had not just served him. I had, with a single, quiet order, frozen his entire empire, pending an audit. This was the moment Evelyn's world broke. She, too, had been staring at her phone. which Anya had dutifully returned from the Faraday box the moment the meal was over. She had been Googling PSPSC. She had been watching her six-figure deal partner melt down. "You?" she suddenly shrieked. Her voice cracking, she stood up, pointing a finger at me. "You did this whole night. It wasn't about Thanksgiving. It was a power play." She looked at Grant, who was now just a shell-shocked man holding a dead phone, and back at me. That was my contract. That was my entire future. "You're not just humiliating us. You are actively ruining me. You're a monster, a cold, jealous, evil monster." This was too much for our mother. The legal jeopardy, the financial ruin, the shouting, the collapse of her perfect day. It started as a whimper, then a gasp, then a deep, ugly, racking sob. She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders heaving. "Stop it," she wailed, the words muffled by her palms. "Stop it, all of you." I can't. She looked up, her face a mess of mascara and tears, her eyes pleading. "I just wanted one nice family picture. In a beautiful house with my successful family. Is that so much to ask? Just one perfect picture." Her cry hung in the air. The picture, the one she wanted to wear the dress for. I didn't move. I didn't reach out to comfort her. I simply reached into the small lacquer box on the sideboard, the one where I had kept the thank you cards. I pulled out something else. It was an old 4x6 photograph. Its edges were yellowed. The gloss cracked with age. I slid it across the polished table. It spun once and stopped, right in front of her plate. "A picture, Mother?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "You mean, like this one?" She sniffled, wiping her eyes, and focused on the photo. It was the three of them, my father, my mother, and Evelyn. They were standing in front of a Christmas tree from a decade ago, all of them smiling, triumphant, perfect, but the right side of the photograph was a jagged, torn white scar. "This," I said, tapping the photo, "was from the Christmas after my first spinal surgery. I was on the painkillers that made me bloated and miserable. Remember you said my face was too tired and ruining the frame? So you cut me out." I leaned forward. "I was there. I didn't make the final edit." I leaned back and gestured around the magnificent, warm, perfectly lit room. "Tonight, I set a place for you. I built a table big enough for everyone. I put all of you in the frame. You, Mother, are the one who keeps holding the scissors." This finally broke my father. He looked at the torn photo. He looked at my mother's devastated face. He looked at me. "Melody," he said. His hand, which had been clutching a dessert fork, went limp. The fork clattered onto his plate. I'm sorry." The words were there, but they were hollow, brittle. He was apologizing for the scene, for the evidence, for being caught. He was not apologizing for the act. "I'm so sorry," he said again, as if saying it twice would make it real. Grant Vale had no time for this. Cornered, ruined, and desperate. He made his last play. He fumbled for his phone again, dialing. "That's it. Get me Sarah Lynn at the Times. Get me TMZ. I am blowing this whole thing wide open. Corrupt council official uses her position to extort a private citizen. She's running an extortion racket from her palace. Get a crew here now." Ben, my head of security, who had been standing impassively by the door, touched his earpiece. It had buzzed a second before Grant's call connected. "Ms. Rogers," Ben said, his voice calm. "We have 2 uninvited media vans at the outer gate. They are claiming to be guests of Mr. Vale." I just nodded. "Ben, please refer them to the property's no trespassing statute. Inform them that La Palmera is a private, registered trust, and that any images taken from outside the property line, or with a long lens, will be considered a tortious invasion of privacy and will be met with immediate and significant litigation. They are not to be permitted entry. Grant's guest status is revoked." "Yes, Ms. Rogers. Ben walked out. Grant stared. He had no army. He had no power. And in the middle of this absolute chaotic collapse, a sudden, muffled thump, thump, thump. Fizz echoed from outside. I looked up. Through the wall of glass, the night sky over the ocean erupted, a bright, glittering cascade of green, red, and gold. Mr. Eris's neighbor was famous for his post-Thanksgiving fireworks display. Lydia, who had been silently observing the entire meltdown, saw her opening. "Ms. Rogers," Lydia said, stepping forward. "What a lovely pyrotechnics display. Perhaps the remaining guests would like to observe it from the veranda. It might allow the air in this room to clear." I looked at her. She was a genius. "A wonderful idea." "Lydia," I said. I touched a panel on the wall. The bright, surgical overhead lights of the dining room dimmed, and the entire veranda outside was suffused in a warm, golden, welcoming light. The atmosphere changed instantly. From an interrogation room to an elegant party, I stood. "Please," I said to the Arises. "The view is much better out there." I led the way, stepping out into the cold, sharp, beautiful night air. The fireworks were magnificent. My mother, father, and Evelyn followed, drawn like moths. Grant remained at the table, a ruined statue. I stood at the railing. I watched the colors explode and vanish. My mother, still sniffling, came and stood near me, but not with me. She was wrapped in her thin, fashionable coat, and she was shivering, her arms crossed. I was fine in my cashmere, but I had a simple, soft gray cashmere shawl draped over the back of my chair. I went and got it. I walked over to her. I didn't say a word about the photo, about the crying. I just held out the shawl. "You'll be cold, Mother." She looked at the shawl. She looked at me. Her eyes were red-rimmed and full of a terrible, warring conflict, her pride versus her chill. She hesitated. Then, her hand shaking, she took it. She didn't say thank you. She just took it. She wrapped it around her shoulders, pulling the soft, expensive fabric tight. She turned back to the ocean, but she was wearing my warmth. It was the first non-hostile contact we had made in a decade. "Ms. Rogers." Anya's voice was at my elbow. "I apologize for the interruption. You have another guest." "Anya, I'm not." "He says his name is Jasper." "Ma'am. He says he was on the original guest list." The 6 p.m. arrival, my heart, which I thought had turned to pure cold procedure, gave a sudden, unfamiliar leap. "Jasper." A man stepped out onto the veranda, guided by Anya. He was in his late 30s, wearing a simple, dark blazer, his hair a mess from the wind, his eyes sharp and kind. He took in the entire, insane scene with one quick glance, my mother crying in my shawl, my father looking lost, Evelyn staring at her phone, and me, standing in the middle of the wreckage. He smiled, a wide, genuine, wonderful smile. "Mel," he said, his voice warm. "You've redecorated. I don't remember a weeping relatives installation." I laughed. It was a real laugh. "Jasper, you're late." "The board meeting ran over," he said. Jasper was my college debate partner, the one who had always told me I wasn't cold, I was precise. He was now one of the most successful angel investors in Chicago. He was my real Thanksgiving guest. "Well," he said, taking a champagne flute from Anya, "I just came from the city. I wanted to be the first to congratulate you. The board met this afternoon." He turned, and I saw his gaze wasn't on me. It was on Evelyn, who had crept closer. Her phone now held low, trying to figure out who this new, obviously wealthy man was. "We are officially, as of 3 p.m. today," Jasper announced to the veranda, "funding the Ravenhill Medical Scholarship." I saw my mother's head snap up. "It's a full-ride scholarship, in perpetuity," Jasper continued, his voice clear over the pop of a firework, "for medical and physical therapy students specializing in spinal trauma, We're specifically funding research for patients whose conditions have been historically misunderstood or dismissed. He smiled. A warm, kind smile. But his gaze was locked directly with Evelyn's. We believe in quiet, effective work, he said. Not all spotlights are kind. Are they? Some just burn. Evelyn winced, as if he'd slapped her, my mother, wrapped in my shawl, stumbled forward. Ravenhill, she whispered. The Ravenhill? Scholarship, but Ravenhill is the trust, the house. She turned to me. Her eyes were wide, the tears gone, replaced by a dawning, terrifying, profound understanding. It's all yours, she whispered, her voice cracking. The trust, the scholarship, all of it. I looked at her. I looked at Jasper, who winked at me. I looked at the fireworks exploding over my ocean, on my property. I don't show off, Mother, I said. I just live. My mother's question, it's all yours, hung in the air, mixing with the sulfur and smoke from the fireworks. Before I could answer, a raw, animalistic roar came from the dining room. It was Grant Vale. He had finally, completely, and spectacularly broken. Fake! His voice was a shredded, desperate scream. He burst through the open veranda doors, his phone held high, recording. He wasn't just yelling, he was charging. She's a fake host, a fraud. He wasn't charging at me. He was charging at the house itself, his eyes wild, aimed at the master wing. I'll prove it. She's an employee, a con artist. This is my house. My house. He was running for the biometric panel on the far wall, the one that sealed the private residence from the public entertaining space. He knew it well. He was going to slam his hand on it, prove it was his, and, what he was beyond logic, he never made it. He crossed a threshold, an invisible line in the limestone floor. A soft, electronic chime sounded from the ceiling. It was not a siren, it was a proximity alert. Instantly, the massive, floor-to-ceiling glass doors that separated the dining room from the master corridor slid shut with a silent, pneumatic hiss. Grant, in his frantic, clumsy charge, didn't see them. He ran, at full speed, directly into the reinforced, soundproof glass. The thud was sickening. He bounced off, collapsing onto the stone floor in a heap, his phone skittering away. He lay there, groaning, the wind completely knocked out of him, and then the house spoke, the automated system, recognizing the impact, chimed again. A calm, clear, pre-recorded female voice filled the room. Welcome to La Palmera. Unscheduled contact detected at internal partition. Please be careful. It was so polite. It was so brutal. Grant, clutching his chest, struggled to his knees. He saw the panel, his panel. He crawled the last few feet and slammed his palm against the biometric scanner. A sharp, loud beep of denial. The light flashed red. Access denied, the house said. He slammed it again, his fist this time. Let me in. Beep, unrecognized user, the house replied, its tone still cheerful. Please contact your host for assistance. He hammered it with his fist, over and over, a desperate, frantic rhythm. Beep, beep, beep. System override, the house voice said, its tone changing, becoming firmer. Biometric identity required for master wing access. This was just too much. I sighed. The sound loud in the suddenly quiet room. The fireworks were ending. I walked back inside, past my stunned family, past Jasper, who was watching this with a look of profound amusement. I stepped over Grant's legs. I placed my own palm flat on the scanner. The light didn't just turn green, it pulsed, a soft, welcoming, emerald glow. The internal doors slid open with a whisper, and the house voice chirped. Welcome, Ms. Melody Rogers. All systems active. Good evening. The silence that followed was absolute. Grant's phone lay on the floor. Its screen cracked, still recording the ceiling. He was breathing in great, ragged, shuddering gasps. He had been defeated, not by me, but by a proximity sensor and a voice recording. My mother, father, and Evelyn had followed me in from the veranda, clustering at the doorway, witnesses to the final, undeniable proof. As I said, Lydia Ramos's voice cut through the silence. She had been standing in the study doorway, watching. The chain of title is clean, she stepped forward, holding the certified abstract of the deed. But since Mr. Vale seems to be a visual learner, perhaps this will help, she nodded to Anya, who was at the main control panel. Anya tapped a screen, the massive 80-inch television screen above the fireplace, which had been masquerading as a painting of a calm, Japanese seascape, flickered to life. It was not a movie. It was a high-resolution, full-color, 8-foot-tall scan of a legal document. This, Lydia said, her voice resonant, as if she were addressing a packed courtroom, is the final, notarized grant deed, as you can see. Anya, on her tablet, zoomed in. Filed with the Los Angeles County Recorder's Office. There is the date May 12th. There is the time 8:03 a.m. Anya swiped, and the image changed to the second page. There is the document number, and the consideration paid. She swiped again, to the signature page. And there, Lydia said, her voice heavy with a final, crushing finality, is the notary's seal, verified by my own stamp and signature. This document is as real and as unchangeable as the floor beneath your feet. I didn't look at the screen. I didn't look at Grant. He was irrelevant. His story was over. I turned and looked at my family. They were the only ones who mattered. My father, his face gray, his hands shaking. My mother, clutching my gray cashmere shawl to her chest like a life raft. I didn't do this to impress you, I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the room. I did this to survive you. I asked for a seat at your table, I said, my voice gaining strength, the words I had practiced in my head for years finally coming out. I asked for a single chair. I begged for it, for years, and I was told I was too sad, too negative, too complicated. I was told I would ruin the atmosphere. I was excluded. I gestured to the room, the food, the view, the wreckage. So I built a different table, and tonight, I set a place for you. I held a seat. You refused it, until you had no other choice. I looked at them, one by one. I am the host. This is my house. The legalities are over. The only question left, the only one that matters, is the human one. Now you know the truth. The choice to stay, or to go, is yours. Evelyn finally spoke. Her voice was not the high-pitched wail of her live stream. It was a low, venomous, shaking whisper. She had finally processed the scholarship, the audit, the house. So this was it, she said. This whole thing, getting the house, the secret trust, Grant's random audit, Lydia, the locked doors, this was all. For this, you planned this. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a dawning, horrified awe. You are the host, and you did all of this just to humiliate us. No, Evelyn, I said, shaking my head. Humiliation is your currency. It's not mine. You're confusing power with proof. I didn't do this to you. I just stopped letting you do it to me. I took a breath. I'm not redefining you. I'm just redefining family. Family is who holds a seat for you. It's not who cuts you out of the picture. The mention of the picture broke my mother, the final dam. Because I was afraid, she suddenly cried. The words tearing out of her. She wasn't wailing now. She was confessing. You were, so much. Your illness, the pain, the surgeries. It was heavy. She was speaking to me, but also to the room, to Jasper, to the memory of her friends. When I went to the club, to my luncheons, they would ask, "How is Melody?" And what could I say that my daughter was in pain, that she was failing, that I was? The mother of that. Her voice dropped to a whisper. It was easier to just say you were busy. It was easier to tell people. Oh, Melody. She likes to ruin the atmosphere. It was easier to blame you than to be pitied, than to be the mother of the sick girl. It was the most honest and most monstrous thing she had ever said. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I reached into the pocket of my slacks. I pulled out one of the small, simple calling cards I keep for my work. On the blank back, I had written a sentence that morning. I handed it to her. She fumbled with it, her hands shaking, and read it. You don't need to protect your reputation by taking my chair. Mother, you just need a stronger reputation. My father saw his opening. He saw a crack of emotion. He saw a chance to fix it, to paper over the abyss. She's right. Susan, he boomed, his voice full of false, desperate cheer. It's all out. We're a family. We can fix this. A family photo right now. He turned to me, his eyes bright. Melody, let's get a picture. The real family. All of us. Right here, by the fireplace. It'll be perfect. The cluelessness of it, the absolute, profound miss, was breathtaking. A picture, I said. Now, after all this? Yes, he said. It's what your mother wanted. It's the new beginning. No, my voice was flat. No picture. Not until the apology is as public as the humiliation was. What, but, I apologized. You apologized to me, in private, after being cornered, I said. The exclusion was in the Rogers clan group chat. The like was public. The silence was public. The apology, I said, holding up my own phone, must also be public, in the chat, for all the aunts and uncles to see, a full, complete admission and apology for what you did, both of you. His face fell. The idea of that humiliation, in front of his siblings, was more than he could bear. Melody, that's not fair. Fair, Grantvale finally screeched, his voice cracking. He had staggered to his feet. He was holding the subpoena in one hand, his cracked phone in the other. You're talking about fair this. This is a kangaroo court. She's a corrupt, power-hungry. That's enough, Jasper said, stepping forward. His voice was no longer kind. It was cold. You're done, Grant. You're yelling about power. Her power isn't the house. It isn't the money. He tapped the subpoena in Grant's hand. Her power is the paperwork. It's the truth. It's the fact that you're a cheat. And she's just the one who finally, officially, noticed. Get him out of my house. Ben, I said quietly. Ben stepped forward. Mr. Vale, your car is at the gate. We can walk, or I can carry you. Your choice. Grant, utterly broken, knowing the media was outside and he couldn't play that card, knowing he was frozen and ruined, just folded. One last thing, Lydia said, stepping in his path. She held out a clipboard. This is the service of process log. I just need your signature confirming you received the subpoena at 6:07 p.m. Go to hell, he spat. Refusal to sign is also an option, Lydia said. My body camera is still on. It has recorded the service, your acknowledgement, and your refusal to sign, she made a note. Thank you for your time, Mr. Vale. Ben put a heavy, unmovable hand on Grant's shoulder and began to guide him out of the house, a ruined emperor with no clothes. We were left, just us, my family, and Jasper. The room was heavy. My mother was standing there, the shawl still clutched in her hands. The card I gave her was on the floor. She looked at the torn photo from Christmas. She looked at the deed on the television. She looked at me. A single, awful, dry sob escaped her. She took a step, not toward my father, toward me. She looked at the floor. She couldn't meet my eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered. The words were almost inaudible, but they were there. Melody, for all of it, I'm sorry. I didn't move. I didn't hug her. I didn't cry. I just nodded. slowly. "Thank you for saying it," I said. "That's a start." I looked at her. My mother, this strange, broken woman who had caused me so much pain. "The rest," I said, "will be confirmed by time." My mother's "I'm sorry" hung in the air, thin and fragile. It was not an absolution, it was not a cure. It was simply a data point, a new one, and one I had never logged before. "The pie," I said, my voice quiet, breaking the spell. "Anya, I believe Chef Marco's pecan pie is ready." Anya, who had watched the entire exchange with the impassive grace of a diplomat, nodded. "Yes, Ms. Rogers." She and Chef Marco brought it out. It was not just a pie. It was a masterpiece, a deep, dark, bubbling expanse of pecans, glazed to a perfect shine, the crust high and fluted. The smell of bourbon, molasses, and toasted nuts filled the room, a warm, sweet, comforting scent that was the absolute antithesis of the scene we had just concluded. I took the silver pie server. My hand was steady. "Mrs. Eris," I said, "you must have the first piece." I cut a generous, perfect slice and placed it on a plate, then one for Mr. Eris, one for Jasper, who was looking at me with an expression of such profound, uncomplicated pride that I almost faltered. I cut one for Lydia, one for Ben, one for Anya, one for Chef Marco. Then, I cut 3 more. I placed a slice in front of my father. He stared at it. I placed one in front of my mother. She flinched when the plate touched the wood. I placed one in front of Evelyn. She looked at it as if it were poison. "It's just pie," I said. "Eat it, or don't. It changes nothing, but it is here." Ben's earpiece buzzed. He listened, then spoke, his voice a low rumble. "Ms. Rogers, Mr. Vale is at the outer gate. He is refusing to leave until he has his stolen property. He's referring to his phone charger." I sighed. "Anya, please find Mr. Vale's charger, and would you please box up a slice of the pecan pie for him?" Anya looked at me, her mask of professionalism slipping for just a fraction of a second. She was confused. "Ms. Rogers, he's a guest who was served a meal," I said, my voice clear, for the benefit of my mother, who was watching. "He did not behave, so he was removed, but he will not leave this property and claim he was starved. He will not claim I was inhospitable. He will be treated with procedure, all the way to the curb. Box him a slice of pie, a plastic fork, and a napkin. It's the last entry in the log. No humiliation." Anya nodded, a new understanding dawning. "Yes, Ms. Rogers." Evelyn, who had been silent, her face a storm of calculations, finally spoke. "I want my phone," she said. It wasn't a request. It was a flat, sullen demand. "Of course," I said. I retrieved it from the silver Faraday box and slid it across the table to her. It stopped just short of her hand. On top of it, I placed a small, thick white card. It was one of the house rule cards from the solarium. "What is this?" she hissed. "I'm not signing anything else." "You don't have to," I said. "It's just a reminder of Rule 1, no live streaming, and Rule 2, no mockery of another's health. The house rules apply until you are in your car. If you post about this, Evelyn, if you try to spin this into your victim narrative—" "Or what?" she snapped. "You'll sue me like him." "No," I said. "That's so messy." I smiled. "I'll simply send the full, unedited 8-hour-long footage from the body camera I've been wearing all night to your new brand partners. The ones you violated FTC regulations to get. I'll send it to the FTC themselves. I am, after all, senior counsel at a professional standards organization. I know the reporting forms by heart. So, you can post. Or you can post your apology first. The one for the attention-seeking video. Your choice." She stared at me. She understood. This wasn't just a threat. It was a mutually assured destruction, and I was the only one with the launch codes. She snatched her phone and the card and said nothing. "Father," I said, turning to him. He and my mother had been pushing their pie around with their forks, not eating. "You offered an apology. It was noted." "Good," he said, clearly relieved, mistaking the end of the conflict for the end of the consequences. "Good. So, we can, what, just go?" "You can. But my offer for a public apology still stands. The insult was in the group chat. The correction must be in the group chat. Or this reunion, is just another performance, like your toast." He deflated. My mother looked at him. I saw a silent, furious communication pass between them. She was done. She was done being humiliated. She picked up her phone. "Robert, give me your phone." "What?" "Give me your phone," she snapped. He fumbled it out of his jacket. She unlocked it, her hands no longer shaking. She was a woman on a mission. She placed both phones on the table, side by side. She opened the Rogers Clan group chat, and she began to type, her thumbs moving with a furious, decisive speed. "We owe Melody an apology," she typed. "We were wrong to exclude her from Thanksgiving. Our reasons were based on our own insecurities and fears, and it was cruel. We are here, at her home, as her guests. We are sorry." She hit send. Then she picked up my father's phone and did the same, her face grim. "Robert, what's your password?" He told her. She typed, "I second what your mother wrote. It was a failure on my part, and I apologize to my daughter. We are trying to do better." She hit send. The buzzing from the phones of aunts and uncles, of cousins, began almost immediately. "There," my mother said, pushing the phones away. "Public?" It wasn't perfect. It was cold. It was forced. But it was real. It was a document. Anya, who had returned, had seen the entire exchange. She walked to the small printer in the study. A moment later, she returned with a single sheet of paper. It was a screenshot of the group chat. "If you would just initial here, sir, ma'am," she said, holding the pen out. "For the house records." They signed it. A small, perfect procedural act. The tension, for the first time, was truly gone. It had been lanced, documented, filed. "Well," my father said, letting out a breath he seemed to have been holding for a year. "That's that." "Now," I said, a small, genuine smile playing on my lips. "Now, we can take the picture." "Oh," my mother said, her hand flying to her hair, her face brightening for a second. "Yes, the fireplace." "No," I said, "not just you." I stood up. "Marco, Anya, Ben, Lydia, please, by the fireplace. You are the team that held this house together today." They looked shocked, but I insisted. I herded them the chef, the housekeeper, the security guard, and the notary into the center of the frame. "Father, Mother, Evelyn," I said, gesturing, "if you'd like to join, there's room on the sides." It was a complete inversion of their values. The staff, the help, were the core, the family were the accessories. My mother, wrapped in my shawl, and my father. His tie loosened. Slowly walked over and stood on the edge. Evelyn stayed in her chair, sullen, refusing. Jasper, grinning, stepped up. "I'll take it," he said, holding up his phone. "Everyone, say procedure." "Procedure." The staff and I said. The flash went off. In that brief, blinding white light, I saw my reflection in the dark glass of the veranda doors. The fireworks now just a distant echo. I wasn't the girl on the edge of the frame, about to be torn off. I wasn't the girl begging for a seat. I was the host. I was the house. I was the one who built the table. The evening wound down. The spell was broken. Lydia packed her aluminum briefcase, the signed service log, and the group chat screenshot neatly filed. "Ms. Rogers," she said, shaking my hand. "A very efficient holiday. My invoice will be sent." Jasper was next. He hugged me, a real, warm, supportive hug. That, he said, was the best Thanksgiving dinner I have ever witnessed. Congratulations on the scholarship. Mel, you're doing it. You're stitching up the old wounds. For everyone. Ben's voice came over the internal comms. Just a whisper in my earpiece. Mr. Vale is off the property. Ms. Rogers. He took the pie. He also received a call as he was leaving. Something about his secondary holding accounts also being frozen. He did not. Take it well. The media have dispersed. He was gone. A soft, quiet click of a door closing on a bad story. My family was at the door. Coats on. My father looked tired. Evelyn looked murderous. My mother just looked. She paused, her hand on the door, still wearing my shawl. Melody, she said, her voice quiet. Christmas, at your father's, at our house. We're decorating. Maybe you could come early to help. It was a test, a small, tentative step back toward the old script. I smiled, a kind, sad smile. Thank you for the invitation. Mother, we'll see. I held her gaze. But you should know. The house here, I said, gesturing to La Palmera, is always open to anyone, as long as they enter with respect. She understood. The new rules were permanent. She nodded, took off my shawl, folded it, and handed it to me. It's a beautiful home. Melody. Yes, I said. It is. They left. I watched my father's Mercedes pull down the long drive. The taillights vanished. The house was mine. It was quiet. The air smelled of pine from the veranda and the faint, sweet echo of pecan. The salty wind blew through the open doors. Anya was clearing the last of the plates. The stemware, Ms. Rogers, she said. The wine glasses you used, shall I put them in storage? No, I said, picking one up, watching the light play in the crystal. Keep them out. For next year, we'll see if they keep their word. I walked through the house, my house, turning off the lights one by one. The deed on the television was back to being a calm, Japanese seascape. I blew out the last of the vanilla-scented candles. I stopped at the main security panel. I pulled up the Rogers family guest code. Access outer gate, parking, valid 1 day. I deleted it. Then, I created a new one. Guest S, Rogers. Guest R, Rogers. I set the permissions. Access outer gate, main door, valid Saturdays, 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. Requires host confirmation 24 hours in advance. I smiled. It was a start. I pressed the master override. The house went into its sleep mode. All doors locking, all systems arming. The master code, as always, was just my name. You don't have to fight for a seat at your own table. You just have to build a table they can't tear down. As I was heading to bed, my personal phone, the one that wasn't for work, chimed. It was a notification from my bank, a wire transfer. The first dividend interest from Jasper's fund had just arrived, deposited into the operating account for the Ravenhill Medical Scholarship. My Thanksgiving was over, but for someone else, for a student I would never meet. A new seat at a new table had just been funded. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We're a new channel and would be so grateful for your support. Let me know in the comments where in the world you're listening from. I'd love to connect and hear your thoughts. Please subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories. Like this video, and give it an extra boost by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.